So,
Sorry.
Wait,
This is not uncomfortable, but it's very weird.
this is the thing?
This is the one.
Absolutely.
And now it almost couldn't have happened in a better way.
Where do you want to be?
So it was just like,
Am I funny? Now if I go over here, am I still funny?
Better strategy.
Yeah, way better.
I never thought about that.
Yes, it worked
I
out.
don't see you 5 years from now that you're not my most famous friend.
You really have to commit to something. Good to have something pushing you.
That's cool. That was really cool.
Yeah, it might have been cool.
This is On the Cusp.
Hello, I'm Ben Greene, and welcome to On the Cusp. This week, my guest is Jen D'Angelo. She's an improviser on the UCB mess hall team Burger Face. She's a writer on the UCB sketch team New Money. And she's been a staff writer for shows like Cougar Town, The Millers, and Golan the Insatiable. A quick reminder that On the Cusp is available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher, and if you like the show, you should consider subscribing to it. Also, if you really like the show, then it would be awesome if you would rate the show on iTunes. This episode is sponsored by Thai Pepper at 6219 Franklin Avenue in Los Angeles, now offering more fried delicacies than ever. Fried tofu, fried shrimp, even fried wontons, all for under $7. Thai Pepper, the perfect way to spend a perfect night. It's Thai Pepper. So one of my favorite things that I learned about Jen D'Angelo when I interviewed her was that she was a natural-born writer. And back in middle school and elementary school, when she would be given a creative writing assignment, she would always way overdo it. It might be like an assignment to write a 2-page paper about a family pet, but she would end up writing a manifesto. That's not the way I was, and even though I've ended up out here in Los Angeles trying to make it as a writer, back when I was in elementary school and middle school, I dragged my feet through every writing assignment I did and just basically tried to bullshit my way through all of it. I thought it might be fun to read a story that I wrote when I was in 7th grade while Jen D'Angelo was working on her novellas. This was what I was working on. That kind of speaks to the kind of writer I was. It's a safe bet that I probably had around 2 weeks to do this assignment and that I did it at the absolute last minute. The story is titled My Monkey and Me, and again it was written in 7th grade. The year was 1999 and the place was Los Angeles, California. I was but a lad of 12 years, and the thing I wanted most in the whole world was a pet monkey. Yes, I wanted more than anything, a pet monkey. So one rainy Thursday morning, my whole family got in our rented car, and we went to a little place called Monkey Town, USA, the place for all your monkey needs. Well, I looked at the furry brown fur balls, and they all looked good, but there was one monkey who stood out. He was about 2'3" and was wearing a little baseball hat for the New York Yankees, and he was carrying a small sign that read, "Can't sleep, clowns will eat me." I was in love! I knew this was the monkey for me, so we bought him. He cost about $300 with all his stuff. On the taxi ride home, I named him James, the monkey so nice they named him twice. When we got home, I took JJ out of his cage. The first thing he did was scratch his head as if to say, "Wah?" His next action was to put out his hand, so I put out my hand to shake, of course, but then he pulled back his hand in an Andy Kaufman manner. The monkey stood there and chortled, pointing at me with such gusto as if saying, "Who's the monkey now?" Well, I was amazed at his human-like nature and laughed right along with him. He then put out his hand again, and this time I was the one to pull my hand back. The monkey stood there in a stupor and seemed to be lamenting. The monkey raised his head with a sullen look and put out his hand once more to say, "Truce." Well, I fell for it. I tried to shake again, but the monkey just ripped his hand away and hit the floor crazily laughing. He then got up and jumped on my shoulders. We played in this incessant manner for the rest of the day, and I knew this was the beginning of a beautiful animal-human relationship. The end. So, rereading that story, I feel pretty proud that as a 7th grader, I already knew what the key elements of a good story were. You want to have a protagonist with a strong want, you want to have a friendship developing between an unlikely pair, and most of all, you want to have pages and pages about handshake fake-outs. But enough of this monkey business. Let's turn now to my interview with somebody who was a way better writer than me when she was in middle school. My friend, Jen D'Angelo.
Does it make you feel good to put yourself in a time and place, to be be okay. Then do nothing.
Okay. If you could choose between having the power to fly for a month and getting to create your own show that was going to, you were guaranteed at least 2 seasons on Netflix.
Oh my god. Yeah, that.
That?
Yeah.
Over having the power to fly for a month.
Yeah, I thought you were going to be like, would you choose the power to fly for a month or like be able to create your own show, but it does like 3 episodes and then gets canceled.
No, it's
2 seasons on Netflix. Yeah, absolutely.
But flying is like a really magical thing to have happen. Like, I'm not saying that in the world that you fly, like, you can't still make deals.
I would still take the Netflix deal.
This guaranteed not. Okay.
Have you asked this question to other people?
No.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say, like, does everyone say fly? Yeah.
I guessed that you were gonna say fly.
Really?
Uh-huh.
I feel like there are going to be enough advancements in my lifetime that I will experience the feeling of flight in a decent enough simulation that I don't need to do.
Wow. So I think, has flying not been a thing that you've really wanted that much?
I guess not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that Netflix series you really want.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I feel like creating a show is like such a feat. Like, selling a pilot is like such an amazing feat. And then getting the pilot shot, such an incredible feat. And then getting on the air is like an even crazier, incredible feat. And then lasting is insane. So to be like, yeah, you got 2 seasons on Netflix, like very prestigious, I'd be like, yeah, great.
It's a little discouraging that you think that it's the part of your thinking is that it's kind of likely that you'll feel the experience of flying more likely
than getting my
having
own
that dream situation.
Yeah. Oh man, this is just super depressing. But I feel like, don't you feel like we'll eventually have like recreational like jetpacks?
Yes.
Like eventually.
I do. I just think that's so different from like
actually
just being
like,
able to Superman fly.
Flying, yeah.
Like with your jetpack, you're charging it for a while.
You're right. Yeah, there's a lot of like you have to pay a waiver. I bet.
And I think
sign a waiver and pay a fee.
There's always a lot of danger involved.
Yeah.
And I think it feels like you've got like a mini plane on your back.
Yeah. It's not gonna feel cool. But what would you? Maybe my imagination's just not big enough.
What would I do with flight?
Yeah.
Like the regular flight?
Yeah.
Feel like a bird.
Yeah. I feel like I would enjoy it for like 5 minutes and then be like, I don't want people to think I'm like a freak. I don't want to talk about this.
You're right. You're right. The second you start flying for that month, you're like having spent all your time on 2020 and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Discussing your power.
Yeah. I also feel like kids' movies of like our generation taught us that like if you have anything remotely fantastical about you, like the government will take you away and experiment on you. So that's what's gonna happen.
But you're not like really taking into consideration all the prodding that you get when you have 2 seasons on Netflix.
That's true, yeah. I mean that also you have to go in 2020. You have to do a lot of interviews. Yeah.
So you were born in Philadelphia originally?
Yeah, the suburbs, yeah. And I grew up there in the same house.
What were your parents like?
My parents are, my dad is a lawyer and he's like very, like, I don't know, he's really hard to describe because he's like kind of super conservative.
Like he voted for McCain, maybe?
Yeah, but, and also just like, kind of like socially conservative a little bit, but also not. Like, he, in college, like he was a theater major, and he did like lights for like concerts that would come through Charlottesville, and he went to the University of Virginia. And he like would hang lights for like the Beach Boys or something. So he was like doing work with like, I don't know, like cool like rock stuff and like doing theater stuff. So he has like an artistic side.
And had to have been around, like, a lot of gay people.
Yeah. And his, like, best friend, like, our, like, uncle, who's not an uncle, you know, he's gay. And so we grew up with, like, this gay best friend always hanging around. So it's like, yeah, it's super weird. He's a weird bird.
What is it? But you said he is a little socially conservative.
Yeah, well, just...
What does that mean for him?
I don't know. I'm kind of learning. My sister is getting married in June, and so the conservative streak is, like, kind of coming out with this wedding where I'm a little bit like, wait, what? Where my dad is, like, very adamant that they get married, like, in a church, like, officiated, like, by the reverend of the church. Yeah, like, weird stuff like that where it, like, comes out in very weird ways. I don't know. It's so hard to describe.
How Christian raised were you growing up?
So that's the other weird thing. We were, like, raised, we went to, like, an Episcopalian school, and Episcopalianism, I don't even know how the noun form of it, it's, like, very watered down, kind of, like, it's a very, like, chill religion, or form of Christianity, so it never felt, like, super intense, but we would go to church, like, pretty regularly, but I don't know, it was never, I don't know, it's really strange. But I just found out that my dad, like, still goes to church every Sunday, which was very surprising to me. Because it always felt like the church part of my family was more like a social thing of, like, we have all these friends that, no, we just see them on Sunday mornings.
You kind of thought it was, like, no big deal.
Yeah, I thought it was no big deal at all. Because we never really talked about it. I guess we would, like, sometimes say grace before dinner, but there was never, like, a thing of, like, well, what would God say about that? Like,
right.
Yeah. And they also, yeah, it's so weird, because I also, in high school, dated, like, a super, super Christian guy, and my parents have kind of made comments since like, right after I broke up with him, they kind of were making comments of, like, well, he was a little weird. So, like, they have, like, a delineation of, yeah, I don't know.
There's an exact right amount of Christianity to feel.
They understand that people can take it, like, way too far.
But they want your sister to get married in a church.
Yeah, which is also crazy because my sister went through, like, a new age, like, a Christianity kick in high school, where she and I went to, like, a Bible study camp on Martha's Vineyard. That was, like, very fun, but also, like, really intense, and so intense that I was like, this is not for me, like, I can't do this. But my sister was, like, really into this, like, new form of Christianity, and taking it really seriously. And then in college, she was, like, a religious studies major, but then somewhere in college it just kind of, like, dropped off, and now she's marrying this guy who's, like, not very religious, and they were like, we want our friend to officiate it, we want it to be outside. Like, she's very now, like hippie-ish.
Wow.
So yeah, it's like the exact opposite fight they're having than you would expect them to have based on our upbringing.
Yeah. And what was your mom like?
My mom was a teacher for a really long time, and then she's like an artist. Like, she is a singer. And she, when I was in high school, went back to college to get her master's in music therapy. So she was doing, like, a lot of, like, drum circles, and, like, she would, like, go to schools and teach autistic kids, like, how to drum. Because I guess, like, sometimes with autism, like, people, they'll get really frustrated with themselves and, like, hit themselves. So she was teaching them how to, like, channel that into drumming.
That's so cool.
Which is really cool, yeah. She is, like, since she's had, like, a million different careers, because she was doing that for a while and then kind of backed off that, and sort of, like, eased into retirement, where she was just, like, part-time selling chocolates. And then I think got really bored of that, and now is kind of sort of easing back into music therapy. But yeah, she enjoys, like, playing music and doing stuff.
Your mom and your dad kind of sound like, just from this description, like Dharma and Greg.
Yeah, I'm realizing that.
How did they meet originally?
They were set up on a blind date. They went to see, I can't remember what it was. I want to say it was Annie. They like went to go see Annie with their friends who were dating or married at the time.
The perfect date.
The perfect date. Because my dad was living in Philadelphia, my mom was living in Virginia. But her friend like convinced her to come up to Philadelphia, so she went up and they went to see Annie, I think. Had a great time. And then I know that their like first actual date where they went out just then was to go see Airplane, which I feel like is like a good example of them.
Yeah.
That they just love Airplane.
You think that speaks to who they are?
Yeah. Yeah. They love it so much and they quote it all the time. But they're still very Dharma and Greggy.
You think your dad was like attracted to your mom for like the yin and yang kind of thing of it, or?
I don't know. Yeah, it's so hard to figure out. They're like the weirdest people. Because even though my mom is like very, like Dharma-y, she's still like, I don't know. My parents are super waspy, both of them. They're like equally waspy. But my mom just has this like weird artistic streak that somehow fits it. I don't know. They're the weirdest. Anything
else that you can give like as an example from your childhood of them being really weird people?
Yeah. Oh man. The description of my parents that I like always kind of point to, although I hesitate to do it now because it's like super unflattering because it makes us seem like we're just like super wealthy. But my parents one time came home on a Saturday afternoon. I like woke up late on a Saturday morning in high school and they weren't there, and I was like, oh, whatever. And like two of my friends came over and we were just hanging out, and my parents came back in and my mom was wearing like a full like a style, she was so styled in like sundress and sun hat. My dad was wearing like pink pants and like a navy blazer and like a Vineyard Vines tie. And they just came back in and we were like, where were you? And they were like, we were at the horse races in Radnor. So, like, they do stuff like that. But then they also, like, my mom on Thanksgiving is always trying to get, like, jam sessions going with our whole family. Which I, like, hate.
Like, everybody playing music together?
Yeah, she's always like, everyone gather on the piano. Like, I'm going to play the piano and everyone's going to sing and, like, play drums and stuff. Yeah, they're super weird. I guess the other, like, weird anecdote that's very indicative of my dad is that he hasn't worn a t-shirt since he was 17.
It's all been button-downs?
Button-downs and polo shirts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I feel like that's the level that they're at.
That piano thing makes it sound like you have, like, a very close-knit family.
Sort of. Yeah. It's weird because, like, my family, I'm the youngest of 4, and my sister is, like, super music-y and super, like, hippie and open, and so, like, she and my mom are, like, she'll do, like, a jam session with my mom, and then my oldest brother is, like, he's the one person in the family that's, like, not artistically inclined at all. We saw him in college. We saw him in a performance of Uncle Vanya in a lecture hall, and it was like the worst thing of all time. He was horrible.
So he was trying it though.
Yeah, he tried it and was like, this is the worst. And we were like, yeah, that was awful. And so then he never did it again. But he will like put up with it. Like if they're doing like a jam session thing, like he'll like sit in there and kind of like listen or whatever, to an extent. And then my other brother and I are super like, we're like sarcastic assholes, and we like are so like self-conscious. We're like, we're not gonna be in a jam session, and we'll like go sit in another room, and then my dad will like float back and forth between the two rooms, just being like, is everyone having fun?
Oh, that's sweet.
So yeah, we're like a weird family with like split down the middle.
How do you think being the youngest affected you?
I feel like, yeah, I've never really looked into like, I feel like there's a million think pieces written on like why the youngest, or why like weird percentage of comedians are like the youngest children. I feel like I've seen articles and not clicked on them, but Yeah, I feel like it's
You like just don't want to know the answer.
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. It happened.
So what kind of kid were you like from 1 to 10-ish?
I was super weird.
What does super weird mean?
So in my elementary school, like every grade, you would write a story, and then the moms would like bind it in a book for you. So you had this little like book that was like, they would type up your handwritten stories and like try to make it look like this really cool book that you made, and you would illustrate it, and it was really cool. And I like took that like way further than everybody else. And in second grade, people would just write like, 2-page like handwritten stories or whatever. And I sat down on a weekend and just typed like a 9-page story about my dog and turned it in to my teacher, and they were like, "This is insane. We can't make a book out of this."
I don't have time to read this.
Yeah, I'm a second grade teacher. I'm really busy. But that was kind of the beginning of like my like young writing career, because then from then on, like all my teachers were like, "Oh, well, you're the writer," and they would like, I don't know, every time there was like a creative writing assignment, they would kind of like make a big deal out of it for me. And then in 5th grade, I think it was, I wrote a Halloween story. And they were like, "Oh, you wrote another one of your stories, like you can read it to the class." And I literally just written it because I saw Scream. One of my older siblings like had a VHS of Scream, and I was home alone for like a couple hours on a Saturday, and I was like, "I'm gonna watch it," and I put it in, and I got so scared, like so horrifically scared by it that I couldn't sleep, and I eventually convinced myself that that it was just a story, and so I could write a story like it, and then I wouldn't be scared of it because I would know how fake it was.
Good idea.
So I wrote like a really fucked up, like really crazy story about a ghost that like comes back and just like kills a bunch of high school teenagers. And they didn't read it before. They were like, "You can just read it to the class." So I read it out loud to the class one day, and people like liked it, and like it was not a huge deal. Like, I feel like if you did that today, it would be like, that kid is going to be taken out of school. Like, there's going to be crazy meetings. But, like, they literally made, like, an Author of the Month plaque for me and just, like, put that up. And then no one else wrote a story after that. So I was just Author of the Month for the rest of the year.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, everyone was too intimidated.
Yeah, everyone was like, "She'll kill us." But it was, like, this weird thing where then, like, people kept talking about it. And then the next year, I wrote a sequel and like read that to my like 6th grade class.
Oh man.
5th grade class or whatever. So yeah, it was like this weird thing. And then there were definitely some teachers who were like, "That girl's like super weird." I remember someone telling me once that I was walking through the library and they heard a librarian be like, "That kid writes the saddest stories." So there were definitely people who thought I was insane. But then when I was in 6th grade, I started writing for chapel. We would do like skits sometimes. So I then started writing like sketches for chapel. So it turned into comedy writing instead of like horror murder writing.
That's young to be writing sketches.
Yeah, well, I think like
yeah. Can you remember what any of your skits were?
I remember one from 8th grade pretty clearly. Or no. It might have been 7th grade. But I wrote, like, a fairy tale thing where it was, like, a young prince had to go on a quest for some reason to save a princess. And, like, he went to 3 princesses and they were all, like, really annoying. And so he didn't want to save them. Like, it's kind of a weird story. But, yeah, that was, like, the one that I really remember vividly for some reason, because we wanted the princesses to be played by teachers. So we asked these 3 science teachers to like play these princesses in drag. And then they eventually decided that drag was too risque. So they were not allowed to be in drag. And I got really upset and like was like, "Well, this isn't fair. Like, this is my vision, is that it's the science teachers in drag.
You guys don't get this comedy."
Yeah, you guys don't get it. But yeah, so I remember like picking a little fight. And then I played the prince's like dragon friend, who was just like basically like Donkey from Shrek. I feel like I probably just ripped off Shrek. But yeah, I remember also improvising a line in that because I had broken my wrist, so I had a cast on, and I like improvised a line about why I had a cast, and it was like that I got really excited because I heard an ice cream truck and I ran after it and just ran into the street and got hit by a car. And I remember people laughing at that.
Can you like what kind of voice were you using for this character? Can you like?
Oh man, I feel like I was like such a weird mix of self-conscious and not self-conscious. I feel like it was probably my voice.
Yeah.
Like, because I didn't want to be like
a combo of you and Donkey.
Yeah. It was definitely not like a Donkey voice. Oh god, that was.
I mean, like Eddie Murphy.
Yeah. I was doing like an Eddie Murphy impression.
I was wondering if you were.
No,
it was more like you improvising that.
Yeah.
That's also cool to be ad-libbing.
It was a very exciting time.
Did you feel popular in middle school?
Not in middle school. I eventually, like, by the end of high school, I was like, I feel kind of popular, but still, like, I feel like a popular loser. Because, like, I was doing, like, in high school, I was doing improv with this theater, like, in Philadelphia on the weekends. And then we had this, like, troupe that would go around and perform places. And I put on a show, like, on a Saturday night at my school and got, like, 50 people to come, which was, like,
that's really
this
good.
Feels great. Like, this feels like a huge success. But at the same time, I also was, like, not in, like, the popular crowd.
So you had, like, a lot of friends and people thought you were cool, like, kind of cool for doing what you were doing, but without being in the popular crowd. Yeah, kind of. Or I think people just kind of, like, enjoyed... I don't know. I really think these chapel skits that I did, people just liked them. Put you on the map. Yeah, they really made my mark. Did you feel, back in middle school, did you feel not popular? Yes, for sure. But then again, I was also vice president of our class in 8th grade. But that doesn't speak to popularity. Well, then, I was on student council. Oh, I mean, it speaks to the people wanted you in power. Yeah, but you're right. I was not cool. Yeah, I definitely felt like a big old loser, which was also because, like, I went to school with the same people from pre-K through senior year of high school. Like, we would get more people, but it was still, like, there was a core group that had been there the whole time. And, like, from, like, pre-K through 8th grade, I was, like, just a big old weirdo. And I had, like, the worst haircut and was just, like, this, like, scrawny little, like, gremlin. And I had a really deep voice. You did? Yeah. Like, can you say at all how it sounded? It was a lot of, like, my mom tells the story of, like, coming home from 1st grade. She put string cheese in my lunch and it had melted, and I came home and just walked in the front door and went, "Mom, there was something disgusting in my lunch." So that's how she impersonates it. Like a weird, deep-voiced, almost Woody Allen. Yeah. Like a very New Yorkie. Yeah. But yeah, I think it was, like, more scratchy. Like, I think it was more like, but yeah. Yeah, you sound like kind of an old Jewish New Yorker. Yeah. It's just like, oh, these Subways are disgusting. This string cheese is gross. Like, not touching it. Yeah. But yeah, so I felt like people in middle school, like, could remember me being, like, a weird gremlin.
And then I really feel like it all turned around for me when I grew out my bangs.
And that did turn... So what did that do for you, growing out your bangs?
Oh my gosh, so much more confidence. But, I mean, no, that's misleading.
Did that, like, begin your dating life, or...
No, that was still a few more years to come. But
you were getting, like, compliments? Like, what about it made you confident?
I definitely felt, like, more adult. Because I had bangs that literally started, like, at the top of, like, the crown of my head and then came forward. Like, they were so thick and crazy. And I wanted to grow them out for so long. And then I finally did, and I was like, I'm a teenager now. Like, this is cool. I'm trying to think, like, when I feel like sophomore year was when I started to feel, like, cool. Which was also tragically when I, like, had my first kiss and got a boyfriend. So that's sad to think about.
Was that super Christian boyfriend?
Yeah. He was not, my first kiss was, like, this guy from the theater program that I did work with downtown. So he was, like, cool and, like, dangerous. But also, like, the biggest douchebag.
Why was he dangerous?
Because he, like, lived in the city. But, like, not...
Does sound dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, the city. But, yeah, and he had hooked up with this girl from my school who was, like, super cool. And, like, she was, like, super popular, really cool. She was, like, a badass. Like, she was always getting in trouble. So I was like, if he hooked up with her and then I hooked up with him, I'm cool.
I was always doing that math.
Yeah. So I definitely, that made me feel, like, pretty cool. 'Cause my two best friends growing up were, like, always... Like, boys were just always chasing after them. And I was like, oh, God damn it. So it was, like, so cool that it was like, oh, well, this guy used to date Morgan Woodward, and she's the coolest girl in school. So that was very
Your clout
exciting.
went way up.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. At least in my head. But then he turned out to be, like, real crazy. And then that also made me feel cool that I was, like, breaking things off with this guy. I was like, this guy can't come around anymore. And then, yeah, it was, like, probably a couple months after that my super Christian first boyfriend, who was a senior, asked me to prom. And I was like, I'm really cool.
He was a senior, you were a sophomore?
Yeah. So that was really exciting.
And did you continue dating, like, after he graduated and went to college?
Yeah. We dated for, like, 2 years. So we dated my entire junior year of high school while he was in college. Because he went to a really small school that was, like, 90 minutes away, just in, like, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And that was the other thing that is, like, weird about my parents, is that they had, like, no problem, like, letting me go and just, like, spend the weekend with, like, my college boyfriend. Although I do think that they did not realize that I was, like, sleeping in his dorm. But they never asked or anything and, like, didn't really care.
That is interesting.
Yeah, it's really weird.
What was that relationship like? Was it a good relationship?
My relationship with my super Christian boyfriend?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It was a good relationship. But it was definitely, like, I mean, he's a very nice guy. I feel like I'm making him sound horrible.
You're making him sound horrible? You said?
Yeah.
All you've said about him is that he's super Christian.
I guess.
And people can draw from that whatever they want.
Yeah, he was really nice. But he was, like, he was also, like, the funny guy. And that was my first experience of being, like, hey, like, I'm funny too.
And do you think, like, objectively you were funnier than him?
Yes. Like,
No competition.
yeah, I was like, this is outrageous. I'm so much funnier than you are. 'Cause yeah, he was on, like, a short form improv team in his college, and I would, like, go see them perform. I was like, I'm way better than all these losers. And he would also, like, and I don't think he was doing this, like, consciously or maliciously, but he would sometimes, like, steal jokes of mine, or, like, we would be, like, driving somewhere, and we would be, like, laughing in the car on the way over there, and then we would get there, and he would, like, say all the funny things that I had said.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I was just like, hey, you're a loser. I did not say that. But yeah, that was like a very weird thing to be like confronted with, dating a comedian.
When did that end?
That ended, like right before my senior year. No, I think like 2 months into my senior year of high school. I think like October of my senior year. But yeah, that turned me off dating comedians, I think like possibly forever. Because I have since then. But yeah, it was a bad experience.
Were you a super extracurricular-y high school student?
Yeah. All of like the chapel skits and stuff that I did was through, we had this like council called vestry that was in charge of like chapel, it was kind of like student council meets like a community service thing. But I did that, and that was like really intense because we had chapel like 3 times a week, and we were like in charge of doing everything for it. But that was how I got to like write all the skits and stuff. But I also would have to give like chapel speeches, which were really crazy. And I guess that was actually...
What were those chapel speeches?
The chapel speeches...
I'm not sure. And remind me, what is chapel?
It's a very weird... our chapel was like... You would go in, and it was like a 45-minute like church service. Where we would do... It would be like 2 hymns and like a reading... And then there was a speech or a skit or like a Q&A or something. Like M. Night Shyamalan went to my high school, so one time chapel was just like an M. Night Shyamalan Q&A. But yeah, so if you were giving a chapel speech, you would just... we had themes for the year. So you would give a speech like loosely related to that theme. So like one of our themes was like... God damn it. It was like risk... It was 3 things. It was like risk, resilience, and I want to say reward, but it's not reward. But it was a 3rd R. Or like, it would be like charity or something like that. So we would get people, they would be like either people from our school or like people from the community who would give speeches. And the ones that I gave, because like I had to give a lot, and they were always like about like, I don't know, I would like try to make them funny, and I don't really remember what they were about, but I remember like at the end you would have to shoehorn in like a thing of like how it relates to God. So I would always have to write like a one last paragraph where I'd be like, and then, God would probably like this too. But yeah, it was like this really weird thing where it was like assembly but with like hymns and readings. And then sometimes we would do skits there that had nothing to do with anything.
A comedy training ground.
Yeah.
Where you always had to shoehorn God in.
Yeah. That really was it. Because, like, also in the chapel skits that I wrote, they also had to include, like, a line about God. So I remember there was one where, like, there were, like, 2 of us who were, like, safety police or something. And we were, like, really ineffective. And we were, like, bike cops, basically. And I remember... very distinctly like running in and it was like our 3rd entrance, and each one of them had been getting like clumsier and clumsier, and so we like run in, we're like trip and fall or whatever, and we stand up, and it was like, people were laughing, and then the line right after that was like, well, you know what, it's easy to fall when you know God will catch you. Like we just had to put in weird God stuff. But yeah,
it's easy to... I'm trying to even wrap my head around that moral.
Yeah, I don't know as like it even makes sense as a moral, or even as a good moral.
Failing is more permissible. Yeah. God.
I guess maybe that was like a risk theme sentence. Yeah.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah. It's easy to... I don't know. Jump off a cliff, because God will catch you.
Were you feeling like you were gonna like do comedy as a career in high school?
Yeah, and I remember thinking, I remember having the thought that it would be, that it was possible to get on Saturday Night Live because there were more people who wanted to be like dramatic actors and movie stars than wanted to be comedians. I was like, it'll be like nobody. Who else wants to be on Saturday Night Live as their end goal?
Your odds are great.
Yeah, the odds are stacked in your favor. And then I chose to go to Northwestern so that I could be close to Chicago, like for improv stuff. And then that blew my theory out of the water. Where I was like, oh, everyone wants to be on Saturday Night Live. This is horrible.
But you have, like, tested for Saturday Night Live since then?
That's true.
That's absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, that was so crazy.
That's just, like, maybe you were exactly right.
Yeah.
No, you were not right. But your optimism brought you very far.
Yeah.
We can come back to that later. So, cool thinking to go to Northwestern to be around Second City and stuff.
Yeah.
Did you get to do a lot of that stuff when you were in Northwestern?
I wound up not doing any of that stuff.
Feels like Evanston is too far away from...
Yeah. I mean, it's...
Or it's not, is
It's not, but it feels... Yeah. When you're in Evanston, going to Chicago feels crazy. But really, it takes the amount of time that it would take you to, like, go to Burbank. It's, like, so close. But we also... Northwestern has, like, a really amazing improv program just for free, like, at Northwestern. That's run by this guy who did like IO in Second City and stuff and started like a really awesome program there. And so that's what I did. And then we would sometimes occasionally like go perform in Chicago, just at like indie shows or stuff. But then we also did like a college improv tournament that was put on by, I think, IO. So we got to perform at IO through that a couple times. So there was, like, some crossover, but I didn't, like, officially do, like, IO or Second City courses or anything.
But you got, like, sort of IO training.
Yeah. Because it was cool because we had, like, it was a long-form improv group, and every year they would make a new team. But it wasn't necessarily all freshmen, but it was, like, the freshman team. So you had a team that you were together for 4 years until... the last people had graduated. So the team that I was on, there were 5 freshmen and then like a sophomore and 3 juniors. There were 9 of us. And then 1 like transferred out and then people graduated. So by the time we got to our senior year, there were like 4 of us that had been performing together for 4 years, and that was like the senior team. So it was like a cool system that kind of like...
Now, the juniors that were getting on this team, had they been like auditioning for a while and this was the time they finally got on?
Yeah.
And you were just like, you got on in your freshman year.
Yeah.
From being just good.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, because I think they also, I mean, they did also try to give it like a majority of like younger people so that you're sticking around together for a while.
Cool.
But the older people, auditioned previously.
Do I know any of the people that were on your team?
So Jess McKenna was on the team a year ahead of me. And now she and I are performing together. We also did, there was like a short form sketch group. And so we were on that for a year together.
That's crazy that you met her then and now do New Money together.
Yeah, it's insane. We performed together so much for so long.
Did you really like college?
Yeah, I loved college. It was awesome. I feel like Northwestern like helped me so much. Like they're which is weird. I don't know. It's very strange, but like they had an amazing writing program that like I really think that's the reason why like I've managed to have a writing career, because like they really teach you everything and they're very like real world oriented, where they like teach you how the business works and they teach you like kind of like how to make your career happen. And I just like loved the community and like it was so fun. There was so much stuff to do. Everyone was like really passionate about what they wanted to be doing and just like learned a lot. It was really great.
Were they completely right about how the business worked?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I did a writing program that was like, it was a 2-year program that we were a quarter system, so every quarter it was a different type of media writing. So we did like screenwriting, like for features. We wrote like a spec episode of TV. We wrote a play, and we did like revisions, and then there was one that was like kind of like revision industry class, and that class was taught by this woman, Regina Stewart, who was like the executive producer of Dharma and Greg. And so she was like, here's how like a TV writer's room works, like here's what is important to succeed. And that's definitely like turned out to be true. It was all about how like it's really important like how you are in a room, like it's really important that you're like someone that people want to see at 4 a.m. Like it's really important that you can take notes and stuff. And it was like, yeah, that has all been proven to me. But yeah, it was crazy.
That program sounds so good.
Yeah, it's
I wish I
incredible.
had something like that.
Yeah. It was amazing. They got rid of it recently, which is a bummer.
Boo.
Yeah. I think they wanted to make it, because it was like a little shitty because only like 12 people got into that, and then they were together for 2 years, and so it kind of like, they wanted to open up more writing classes to more people, because it would be hard to like, that sucks up a lot of like the writing course.
How'd you get in?
You had to submit a 10-page writing sample, and I can't remember what I submitted. Oh, it was the opening scene of a play that I'd written. You had to, yeah, it was like a 10-page writing sample, and then an essay about why you wanted to do it, and like what your career goals were.
Do you remember the first thing that you wrote that you were like, oh, this is actually pretty good? Or that you would even look back now and feel proud of?
Yeah, I wrote a play my sophomore year, or freshman year of college, and there was a theater board that was like, that just put on student written stuff, and so I pitched it to them. I was on the board also, but they were like, yeah, we're gonna produce it, and so they did it in the fall of my sophomore year, and I remember being like, I'm like proud of this, which was like a really cool feeling.
What was the play about?
It was about a little girl in like kind of it was set in like Victorian England, where it was like very like, do you know Edward Gorey?
Yeah.
That artist. It was like that kind of aesthetic, and it was a little girl who she was like from an aristocratic family, and she would tell all these lies, and then one day a witch puts a spell on her and all the lies come true. It's basically the plot of the film Bedtime Stories, but that came out a couple years after.
Oh, so they stole it from you.
Yeah, Bedtime Stories stole my play. But yeah, it's like this dark like children's story where in the end it turns out that this guy that's been narrating the thing all along is like it's so messed up. He's a murderer. And you find out he's writing this story as he has written other stories that have been referenced in the play, just about all the kids that he's killed and how he killed them.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have like a personal aesthetic like to like what you write, or like there tends to be trends to like when you're like writing original pilots or plays?
I don't know. I definitely think I have like a voice, but I don't really know.
I mean, like, does magic pop up a lot in it, like it did in that play, or does like Edward Gorey is like a little bit like Addams Family-ish,
yeah,
right? Does that pop up?
Kind of, yeah. I definitely think there's a difference between when I was writing plays and were I to go back to writing plays and what I write for like TV and stuff. I feel like when I write TV and movies, it's much like sillier, and there's like kind of a streak of absurdness to it, but it's like very like silly. And then for plays, like I definitely go like way darker. Yeah, I don't know.
Where does that darkness come from?
I don't know. I feel like probably the Scream Halloween story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right, you saw Scream in 5th grade,
yeah,
and it ruined your brain.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely was not like a happy kid. Like, I was very much like, I loved just like being alone and like watching TV and then writing. So I feel like something in that like, yeah, kind of like stuck with me. Not that I was like necessarily like unhappy, but I was just like very like, I like being alone and like not being bothered. But yeah, I don't know.
Were you just like, do you think brooding, or
yeah, maybe.
Like, do you remember what like the inside of your brain looked like, or like what made you want to be alone, or like, and did you feel lonely, or you were just like happy being by yourself?
I don't know. I don't remember like feeling lonely as a kid. There were definitely some times in like high school where I felt lonely. Actually, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It's almost as if I had this like, you know when people are like, I'm an artist, like I need to be alone, like I'm a mad artist. It's almost like I had that as a kid, but without being like able to articulate that. But I just like loved like, I don't know, like when I was in, I guess like 6th and 7th grade, like I was obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and just like loved watching Buffy, and then like I would write like my own vampire stories. And yeah, it's weird because I like had friends and I would like do stuff, but there were definitely like weekends where I was like, I'm just gonna stay home and like write. And I remember when I got into high school and was like being more like socially active, I remember being like, oh man, I haven't like just sat down and written for a really long time. Like I used to do that. And then I would try and do that and like it wouldn't be as productive, and then I would feel bad, and then I would be like, I'm not a writer anymore.
Does that feel appealing to you now, like to go to like a snowy cabin for like a month by yourself and just write there?
I've definitely thought about doing it, and I've never pulled the trigger on it, which I don't know if that's just like me being lazy or me being like, I don't actually want to do that. But I did, like I went to Vietnam by myself, and I was like really excited for like, I'm going somewhere by myself, it's gonna be awesome. And then I was like with a tour group the whole time, and I wasn't alone that much. And I was a little bit like, I was torn on whether or not that wound up being like a good thing or a bad thing. I think I probably wouldn't have enjoyed 2 weeks alone, but maybe like a long weekend in a snowy cabin.
But part of you craves it.
Yeah. And when I got back from Vietnam, I definitely was like, what if I just like drove to like Big Sur and got like a weird bungalow somewhere and wrote a movie in a month. But yeah, there's definitely a part of me that wants to do that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I ever will. I also feel like that would drive me insane. I don't know.
So you moved out to LA in 2010?
Yeah.
And did you always know it was going to be LA next?
Yeah, my sophomore year of college, the summer after, I interned out here. And after that, I was like, I gotta be there.
Where'd you intern?
I interned at Comedy Central and Kerner Entertainment. I forget what the full name is, but it's Kerner Production Company. They made the Smurfs.
Wow, that's a big deal.
It was a really big deal. It was crazy. That summer, I was at Comedy Central on Tuesday, Thursday, and then I was at Kerner Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And every time I was at Kerner, I was just reading and watching every Smurfs book and cartoon to create a database for the screenwriters of like all the magic that was introduced, like any props, like any secondary Smurfs, like all this crazy stuff.
That's crazy how well versed you are in Smurfs now.
Yeah, although I don't know if I remember really any of it. I remember like all the like really fucked up parts, like the racist and the sexist parts before they were Americanized.
What are those?
There's one story where I forget, I think it's an evil bear, like a poisonous berry the Smurfs eat, and it turns them black and they become really lazy and like stop working, and their whole society goes to shit because they're all black Smurfs.
Oh, that's terrible.
They did the same story for like the American cartoon version, but they changed it so that they turned purple.
Oh, well, now
Yeah,
that's...
so now it's fine.
I'm going to show that to my kids.
Yeah. I mean, kids can watch that. And then in the original book, when Smurfette appears, Gargamel makes Smurfette, and she's really ugly, and he sends her into the Smurf village to, like, distract them. But she's so ugly that no one will talk to her, and they're just like, oh, you're annoying, get out of here, you big ugly loser. And then she cries, and Papa Smurf is like, I'll make you a real Smurf. And so then he makes her into the super hot version of Smurfette. And then everyone gets so distracted by her beauty that, like, they break their dam and their whole village floods. And she's like, you're right, I ruined your place. Like, I'll leave. And Smurfette just leaves and I don't think ever comes back.
Is that something that happened in the Bible?
Yeah.
Is that the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, kind of? Or Lot's wife or something?
Is it?
I don't know.
I don't know. I also don't know anything about the Bible.
Okay. After all of it.
Yeah, none of it stuck.
Slightly more stuck about the Smurfs.
Yeah, exactly. All the Smurf knowledge is there. Old Testament, no.
You were doing that, like, for the people writing the Smurf movies or Smurf TV shows?
The screenplay for The Smurfs, the movie. The Neil Patrick.
So you kind of had your influence on that.
Yeah. You know, if they used Vanity's, like, enchanted mirror, I put that in the database.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What was your internship with Comedy Central like?
That was just, like, very much like an office assistant-y thing. I wanted to be working in development, but I applied for the internship, like, after they had already picked everyone, so they were like, you can come work in production. Which was much more like office-y, administrative-y stuff. I mean, the development side, the interns are doing all that same stuff too. But the guy that was the VP, or maybe president of production at the time, was a Northwestern guy, and he was great. And at the end of my internship, he was like, he sat down with me and was like, what do you want to do? Like, how can I help you? What advice can I give you? And I was like, I want to be a TV writer and a comedian. And he was like, okay, great. You just have to move out here when you're done and try and get a PA job and be a writer's assistant. I was like, okay, great. So then after that, I was like, that's what I'm going to do.
And is that exactly what you did?
Yeah. I moved out here and emailed everyone that I had worked with and everyone that I knew, being like, I'm looking for any assistant job. And then I, like, babysat for a little while. And then, but it was like a month or two after I moved here that a girl who had been my supervisor at Comedy Central emailed me being like, my fiance is working on a show and they need a writer's PA. And I interviewed with them and then started that job like 2 weeks later.
What was that show?
Drop Dead Diva on Lifetime.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's very fast to be, like, launched right in.
It was amazing. I was aware at the time of how crazy that was, but looking back on it, it's like, no, that's actually, like, way more insane than you even realize. Because a writer's PA is, like, the perfect job that you want to get.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it's, like, absolutely perfect.
PA job, maybe a little bit tricky to get.
Yeah.
And writer's PA job, you hit the jackpot.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, you're just, like, hanging out with them. And this job in particular was great because the production was in Atlanta, so it was just the writers' offices, and so there was, like, not a ton to do. So I had a lot of downtime so I could be, like, writing stuff and then just, like, hanging out with the writers and getting to know them. It was great. But then I left that job and my resume from then on, even though I was, like, advancing, on paper it looks like I just got demoted and then demoted and then demoted because I left that job to go be just a production PA on Big Bang Theory because I was like, I want to be working on sitcoms, so this will be closer to what I want to do, even though the job is slightly worse. So then I worked on Big Bang for a year, and that was, like, the most fun ever. And then while I was there, I got my manager, and then I was like, well, now I'm just gonna quit this so that I have time to, like, do my own stuff.
How'd you get that manager?
My 301 grad show at UCB, there was randomly a casting director and a VP of, like, film from Warner Brothers there.
I would have said, oh, because they knew people in the class?
Yeah.
Because I would have told, if somebody said, like, does industry ever come to those grad shows, I would have told you definitely not.
Yeah, oh no, yeah, that's insane.
But in that context, yeah.
Yeah. So they were there, and then we talked afterwards. We, like, went, my whole class, like, went to La Poubelle, and we exchanged information, and they tried to set me up with an agent at WME, and I was, like, meeting with people there, and then they eventually were like, we can't sign you, you're, like, nothing. But then, like, 4 months after that, the casting director just out of the blue emailed me and was like, I'm casting this pilot, and I want you to come in to read for one of the parts. And then I wound up testing for that pilot. So I was, like, in the final 4 for it, and I had no representation, but Dave Becky, who's my manager now, was one of the EPs on the pilot, and so he was like, I'll represent you. I was like, great. And that was, like, that was as Big Bang was winding down, so I was about to have a month hiatus anyway, and I was like, I'm just gonna keep this hiatus forever. And then, to keep myself busy after Big Bang, I started working part-time for Sacha Baron Cohen's production company, so then I became just, like, a paid intern. So I went from writer's PA to production PA to just paid intern, even though I was, like, doing better. Like, it was, yeah. Crazy steps down.
Yeah. But all makes sense.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you were going through classes at UCB and doing stand-up?
Yeah, I think, I had started stand-up by then. Yeah, and then I just, like, finished up at UCB. And I think I had only just started stand-up, though. But yeah, I was doing all that at the same time, too.
What was your, like, lowest point in these, like, or did you have, like, because it sounds like you pretty much went from job to job to job, but did you have any moment of being like, oh, I'm worried this might not work out?
Yeah, I definitely, when I quit Big Bang, I was, like, really scared, and I was, like, very fine, like, I was fine to just, like, go get, like, a waitress job and just, like, do whatever for money. Literally whatever.
Jen, no.
But I remember, like, after, there was, like, a month right when I quit Big Bang where I was, like, having trouble even getting, like, a waitressing job. And then I was like, oh, no, like, this is a big mistake. And yeah, it's, like, really hard to think back on that time because I can't even remember how long it actually was. But I was also, like, interning at UCB at the time, so I was, like, keeping myself busy. But yeah, there was definitely an uneasiness. Because I also had given myself, like, a weird timeline where I would go back to Big Bang Theory for the next season. So I was like, I'm going to sit out one season cycle. So, like, when I started getting halfway through that season, I still had nothing. I was like, I'm going to have to, like, crawl back and be like, please, can I come work for you again? And everyone's going to be like, oh, how'd your like, stint as an actress and comedian go? They would not have been like that. They were really nice. But, yeah, I was definitely worried that I was going to have to go back. Groveling.
So how did you end up getting staffed on Cougar Town was your first job?
Yeah.
And how did that happen?
Well, I did a 2-week writer's room for Golan the Insatiable, which was, like, an ADHD Fox thing. And that was just through, like, stand-up.
So then tell about that. How did you get that job through stand-up? You started doing stand-up, and what was your stand-up life like?
My stand-up life was very, like, sporadic, where I kind of, like, when I signed with my manager, I think I had kind of just started doing stand-up, and they thought that I had been doing stand-up for a really long time, and I was in a place where I was like, and I still kind of have this attitude where I'm like, I'll never say no to anything, like, I'll just say yes and then figure it out. And they were like, we put you up for this, like, Fresh Faces thing at the Laugh Factory where you're gonna perform. It's like a competition where you perform at the Laugh Factory, and then there's, like, an online vote, and then you can, like, come back or whatever. And I was, like, definitely not ready to do that, but I was like, yeah. And I did it, and it went, like, well enough. Like, no one's gonna see that and be like, that's an amazing stand-up. But I had like enough jokes that it was like, you could tell that I was like a funny writer, I think. Because there was a guy from ADHD just in the audience, and he brought me in for a meeting, and they were staffing up like a ton of their shows. They were starting like 4 shows at the same time, and they just hired me to do this like 2-week thing where it was just like breaking stories, and I feel like they were on the. I remember I had like 3 meetings with them. Where I could like tell that they liked me, but I think they were a little bit like, she's very Greene. But yeah, they eventually...
What do you think showed that you were Greene?
Just I think like, they would be like, so have you ever been in a writer's room before? And my answer was literally like, no, but you know, I was a PA, so I was like around them, which is not a good answer. It's
I've read
better to just be like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read books about them. Yeah, I definitely seemed like super like eager and like I didn't know what I was doing. But then that room was great, and they were like, it was very chill and like very easy, and that kind of like gave me the confidence and to like feel like I could be in a writer's room. So then when I had my meeting for Cougar Town, it was like amazing to be able to be like, oh, I've been in one, yeah, and this is what, like, so I felt more ready. But yeah, Cougar Town was just through my agent, like, submitting my pilot sample.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And what was it like working on Cougar Town?
Cougar Town was, like, the best job ever. It was so amazing. The guy that runs the show is just incredible. He really... like, the room was super fun and very laid back, and it was great. And there were other people, I came on for season 5, and there were there was a writing team that was new, so the 3 of us were, like, the new people, and they were older writers who'd been on, like, a bunch of other shows, and they would make all these jokes of, like, this is the best job we've ever had, like, this is the best staffing experience ever. And then they would be like, it's all downhill from here to me. And I was like, ha ha ha. And then I was like, oh man, what if it is? Because everyone there was like really amazing. I mean, the Millers was really amazing too. So I would not say it's all been downhill. But yeah, Cougar Town was so fun.
So what were like your jobs working in a writer's room to somebody who hasn't been there yet? Like... how much were you like, did you have an episode that you like wrote the first draft of all yourself, and like, or like what was the balance between that and like like pitching with people and like doing stuff like that?
Yeah. So in the room, at least like how Cougar Town and the Millers kind of was like, everyone's kind of like all in it together. So when you're in the room like pitching, I mean, more senior people will be, like, leading the discussion and stuff, but there's no sense of, like, you as a staff writer have, like, a different responsibility than anybody else. It's, like, you're just there breaking the story with everyone. And then, yeah, for Cougar Town, people were assigned an episode. So I had episode 9, because they went in order of, like, rank. And so I had episode 9, so I took the story that we had all broken together and like a full outline, and then went and wrote a draft of it, and then brought it back in, and then yeah, everyone read the writer's draft, and then the showrunner just like goes through and is like, I think we could beat this joke, or like this scene I think should be restructured this way, and just gives notes, and then people will split up that work and split into like 2 or 3 rooms and rewrite it. And then when you're in the rewrite process, it's a lot of, yeah, just like pitching jokes to beat jokes that they had written, or like, yeah, restructuring a scene is always like, that's the tricky work that nobody likes doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of how it's like.
Where do you think you shine in a room like that?
I don't know. I feel like I'm probably stronger at jokes, than anything else. But
when you're working on the Millers, it sounded like you got like special credit for like working on like a number of alt jokes that like could be used in scenes.
Yeah, well, that was that it's weird because like with the multicam, more so than a single cam, since like your audience is right there, you can immediately tell what jokes are falling flat. So for the Millers, it was like on the weekends before tape nights, we would like try to come up with extra jokes on the off chance that like jokes were gonna fail, just to like have, so to take the pressure off of like having to pitch on the fly and be like, okay, there's like 100 people waiting for us to get done with the scene and we have to like write another joke. So yeah, there was like that like kind of extra job of like writing different jokes, which is very much like a multicam thing. Because for single cam, it's like you pick what you think is funny and then you're just gonna shoot it. But for multicam, you have to like factor in the audience part of it.
It's cool to just have that confidence to know that like you can do jokes really well.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, there are obviously like always times where you're like, I can't write anything and my story sense is all broken and I haven't written a funny joke in weeks. But it was like, it definitely was cool to know, like after the Millers, being like, okay, none of these people knew me before either, and now they seem to like me and think I'm funny, so like that's good to know.
Yeah, you're just, your network is growing.
Yeah. Because I remember when Cougar Town ended, I was like, what if like no one will ever hire me or like me or think I'm funny ever again? It's like always so scary when the job ends.
Have there been moments in either of those rooms where you felt like, what am I doing here? Or
yeah, definitely. I always like, I get jealous of people with writing partners, because I'm like, will you have someone that you can like talk to at the end of the day and be like, was it weird? Like, did I do something weird? Did I say the wrong thing? Because there's definitely moments where like, I don't know, you can just like get so in your head about like the dumbest little thing, and then you can, if you're not like taking care of yourself, you can just spiral out into like, well, everyone hates me and I'm a big old loser.
You just made me really want a writing partner.
Yeah, no, I'm always like, and on the first day of a job when like you don't know anybody and the writing partner, like a writing team is there and you're like, God damn it, you like have a friend already. It really made me want a writing partner. But then you have to split your money and that's no fun. So that sucks.
I don't need much money.
Yeah. Still a good amount of money. We should just get writing partners.
Can you talk about what it was like to test for Saturday Night Live?
Yeah. I think so.
Oh yeah, how did it happen for you? And then what was it like?
It was, they saw me, I did Montreal.
Just for laughs?
Yeah. As a stand-up, and they saw me there. And so I got a call like the next week that they wanted to bring me to New York to test for it, which was insane because I literally, at Cougar Town like the year before when SNL stuff was happening, I was like, I told my friend who had tested for SNL, I was like, I've kind of just like come to terms with the fact and accepted that I'll just never be on Saturday Night Live. And she was like, it seems like you're a little young to be making such like a depressing declaration. But I thought I was being realistic because I was like, there's a ton of female cast members on there now. And like, hopefully by the time that they're hiring people again, like I'll either be doing something else, which was really just a kind of a guarded way for me to be like, I'll be too old. Yeah, so it was insane to be like, oh, they want me to go there? Like, I thought I would literally never do that. And I was at the Millers at the time, and I had just taken off, like, 5 days to go to Montreal, so I felt super weird asking for, like, 2 days off to go to New York.
Yeah, with the best excuse in the world, but, like,
yeah,
still...
It was still really stressful. And
you're, like, job hunting while you have a cool job you really want.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, this job is so amazing. I'm very grateful for it, but can I please go try to get this other really awesome job? But my boss...
that I've been dreaming about.
Yeah, since I was a child. But I was so nervous about it, but my boss was immediately like, you have to go, of course, that's amazing, like, that's great. And so he was really cool.
That's great.
But yeah, so I flew to New York. I was in the same row. I was like sitting with Allison Rich and Marcus Ray, who also tested. And so we were just like talking about it for a while, and then to shut my brain off, I had bought Courtney Robertson's tell-all book. She was a Bachelor person. She's like the most hated Bachelor contestant of all time, and she wrote this like autobiography, and I was like, this is the perfect garbage to like not think about.
Yeah.
So I read that entire book cover to cover for the rest of the flight. And then yeah, we got to New York on Tuesday night, and the test was on Wednesday. And so there's like this weird feeling of like, well, gotta just like go to bed and wake up and do this crazy thing. But luckily, like,
could you go to bed, or like were you laying in bed?
No, I went to, which is crazy. Yeah, I would think that I would not have been able. The whole time that I was there, it felt like I was in, like, I had very successfully convinced myself that this like did not matter, and that this was like already a cool thing, and that like nothing would come from it, that this was it, like this is all I was doing, and so it was just gonna be like fun and crazy, which is insane because I'm like a very nervous person all the time, but I somehow just like tricked my brain into thinking that I was not nervous and convinced myself that it was true. I think because I read the night before I left, I read Splitsider has a series where they interview people who tested for SNL but didn't make it. So I read all of theirs, and I was like, okay, this is great company to be in. Like, this is fine.
Yeah.
And then I also read, like, a Vanity Fair article about people who had been on SNL talking about testing for it. So I felt, like, very, like, covered. Like, I knew what to expect and stuff.
Were you, like, there with characters, or were you going to be doing stand-up for them?
I was going to be doing stand-up, but I didn't know that. So I found out that I was testing, and I was like, shit, I gotta come up with something to do. And so I emailed...
I gotta learn how to juggle.
Yeah. I gotta learn how to just, like, blow fire out of my mouth. I emailed Mike Still, being like, can I do 5 minutes at Star Punch, please? And he was like, yeah. And so I just, like, spent 2 days, like, coming up with characters. And we were literally, like, at the Millers, like, over lunch, people would be like, what are you doing? I'd be like, is this funny? And they'd be like, yeah. So I came up with 5 minutes of characters. I was so nervous, especially, like, about to go into Star Punch. I was terrified because people had found out that I was testing. And I, like, didn't want to tell people, but Nicole Byer was like, if you're doing characters this time of year, like, people just know. I was like, okay. But I was terrified because I was like, people know that I'm testing, so if I go up and I bomb, it has the added thing of, like, people being like, well, good luck in New York. So I was, like, literally, like, sweating. I had written my, like, set list on my hand, and I sweated off, like, I was a mess. And then Star Punch went, like, really well. So then right afterwards I walked off stage, I was, like, on such a high of, like, this is great, I feel really ready. And my manager was in the audience, and she came back, and she was like, okay, so we talked to them right before you went on, and they want you to do exactly what you did in Montreal, so you're just going to be doing stand-up. So I was like, okay, great.
This will all be a secret.
Yeah. But I wound up working in 2 of those characters, like, into my stand-up routine. But then it was annoying because then I was, like, doing a mad scramble to get on stand-up shows to practice my stand-up set.
That is
annoying. There. But people were really nice, and some people put me up, which was great. But yeah.
At this point, do you want to, like, be an actor just as much as you want to be a writer?
Yeah, I feel like now is the first time in my life where I've, like, really thought about that, because I've always been like, yeah, I'm pursuing both, like, equally, and, like, whatever wins out is the one that I do until that's over, and then I try again. but this like bout of unemployment since the Millers ended has been like real weird, and it's the first time where I'm like, maybe I don't actually want to be an actor because it's like really excruciating.
Why has it been weird?
I think because I thought when it got canceled, it was so sudden, like no one thought that was going to happen at all. And then I was like, okay, well, it's about to be pilot season, so I at least have that I can like focus on, rather than just kind of like waiting until staffing season happens again. But then pilot season has been super slow. I don't know if it's for everyone or just for me. And that feeling of like not having any control, just kind of like waiting around for something that you're maybe right for, to maybe call you in, to go in, to like maybe get a call. You know, like there's so many things there's so many variables.
Yeah, that feels terrible. And
yeah.
Especially after like your experience, like you tested for that other show
yeah.
without like doing many auditions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. I also, my first 2 pilot seasons, I guess, I mean, the first one was when I tested for the pilot that I then got my manager. So that was like the first audition I'd ever gone on. So that wasn't like a full pilot season. But then the next pilot season, when I had like my agent and my manager, I was like all excited. And then I went out like a kind of a decent amount, and I wound up testing for mixology, and then that didn't turn out. But I was like, this is great. Like I am like 2 for 2. Like this is amazing. And then last pilot season was like nothing. Like I went out like maybe 3 times. And then so far now it's been like nothing. So it feels like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I always knew that streak of, like, testing for 2 things, like, didn't mean anything and, like, wasn't, like, anything to get excited about, because it's, like, that's just part of it. But it's weird to be confronted with the reality of, like, oh, no, you did actually let that get to your head a little bit, and now that's why this feels a little bit worse.
It definitely means something and a lot. Like, it's very indicative of, like, what the future might hold.
Yeah, it's definitely, like, it's an accomplishment. But it's not like as big of an accomplishment as it can feel like when it's happening. When it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like such a weird thing. But yeah, it's definitely made me think about like, well, with writing, like I mean, there's still a lot of stuff that's out of your control, but you at least can like work on something and like make it as good as you can make it, and then like do stuff with it. Like, yeah, it's not just...
How much are you having to hustle as, like, a writer right now? Like, or, like, are working on projects to, like, try to sell and stuff?
I'm working on a feature right now, to try and, sell that. But, and I just recently have been like, should I be writing, like, more TV samples? 'Cause, yeah, it's really hard to tell. I don't know. It's difficult.
What's your biggest hope for where you might be in like 5 years from now?
That's a really good question. I'm horrible at 5-year goals, because I literally like when I interviewed for my job at Big Bang, the line producer was like, "What's your 5-year plan?" And I said to be a showrunner of my own show, and they like openly laughed in my face, and I was like, yes, I understand that's like a ridiculous goal for 5 years from now, but that's just like the next thing that I want to do. So that's just like what I'll work at until it happens. So yeah, I mean, definitely like having my own show would be amazing. Like
You have a show with 2 seasons on Netflix?
Yeah, exactly. My 2-season Netflix deal. That I gave up the miracle of flight for. So yeah, I guess that.
And any thought on like what kind of show it might be, or like like a kind of show, like right now, like watching Transparent. Have you watched that at all?
I haven't. No, I haven't seen it yet.
But for me, like I watch that and I go like, oh, I'd like to create a show like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like Veep is that for me. I'm like, this is amazing, and I want to do something like this. And I sometimes get that feeling with Broad City too, but I feel like when I watch Broad City, that's like the one show where I can like fully enjoy it without like thinking about like what went into it, because it's like so unique to them, and I'm like, I could never make anything like that. But like, I don't know.
Would the absolute dream be you acting in a show that you create?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the absolute dream. I think that's like kind of what I'm learning now is like, I'm not so much like an actor now. I feel like I'm more like a writer who will write stuff for myself. Like, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that goes.
And any, like, life things that you would have liked to happen 5 years from now?
Yeah, oh man. That's the big question.
Do you want to have 38 kids
I want to have
by 5 years?
38 kids in 5 years. Yeah, I do think about, like, when I'll want to have had kids by. It's such a big stress.
Is that a thing you definitely want?
Yeah. And it's so weird to be like, okay, well, I want to be, like, a young mom, but that means, like, having kids, like, kind of soon. It's so scary. But yeah, I guess in 5 years.
And you could, like, you're a writer on TV shows. Now might be
Yeah, no.
really peak.
The best time. I should tell my boyfriend not to listen to this.
This episode's gonna be really scary.
Yeah. I'm gonna listen to this in 5 years, like a childless, like, I don't even know what. Just like, oh, what have you done? But yeah, I would think in 5 years I would want to have a kid, I guess, which is so crazy. But I guess, yeah. I guess that's it. My mom was in her late 30s when she had me, so I'm a little bit like, okay, that gives you some time.
And in the short term, any hopes for new monies, like final year of being a mod team?
Oh man, I just hope that we do a lot of crazy weird stuff.
Me too.
Yeah, I just hope we do a bunch of those plays. I'm like excited about the play.
Me too. It's really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, do you have hopes for new monies last year?
Yeah, just that we surprise ourselves.
Yeah.
How
long have you been on New Money? 2 years now? 3 years?
2 years.
It feels like, yeah, I don't know. It feels so weird to be like a new member of an old team.
I felt that way.
Yeah.
Coming on, I came on after they'd been around for a year, and already it felt weird.
Yeah.
Like as the only new member of the team, and like I definitely had like a lot of like conflict between like what would have been better to be on a new team, or like this team that is so cool.
Yeah.
But like it made me like gave me like a little bit more of a complex.
Yeah, no, totally, yeah. Yeah, it feels really crazy to be like, everyone's so funny and they all know each other.
Yeah, but you
yeah,
don't.
like
Do you feel folded in?
Yeah.
yet,
Oh,
or?
totally. Yeah. But yeah, it's just so funny, like for you to say, like, oh, to surprise ourselves. It's like everything is kind of still a surprise to me.
Yeah, on the team.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad that I can do it.
Thank you so much for coming on and doing this.
Thank you so much. This is great.
I hope all your dreams come true.
Thanks.
And I hope you never fly.
I never want to fly.
For someone to feel something that you get.
So that was it. Thank you for listening to my interview with Jen D'Angelo. If you want to see some sketches that Jen has written perform live, you should come see our sketch group, New Money. We go up the second Wednesday of every month at 8:30 p.m. at UCB Sunset in Los Angeles. Again, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the show or rating us on iTunes. And if you have any questions or comments about the On the Cusp podcast, you can always email me at onthecusppod@gmail.com. Special thanks to Casey Trela and Hi-Ho Silvero for all the music in this episode, to my sound editor, Joe Burge, and to my producer, Cece Pierce. This has been On the Cusp.
Beanie, 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 da-doom, doom, da-doom. That's your outro music.